Good afternoon. Hello and welcome. Yay! Family Medicine Midwest. We're going to get started now. Go ahead and find your seats or wherever you're going to perch. And welcome to our 14th annual conference, and welcome to Naperville, Illinois. I'm Dr. Janice Benson, a lifelong family physician member and an emeritus member of the Family Medicine Foundation Board of Directors. That's a fancy way to say that I've been involved with Family Medicine Midwest for a long, long time. But I'm happy to see many familiar faces and some new first-time attendees, too. Some of you have started with Family Medicine Midwest even as a student and are now here as a resident or as a family medicine physician. During this conference, you'll hear from family medicine physicians, educators, residents, and students from across the Midwest who are exploring ways to improve family medicine and embracing all patients while advocating for an inclusive and equitable healthcare system. Boy, never more important than now. Our foundation continues to have a commitment to promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in everything we do. We want to ensure that this conference reflects the experience and values of our patients and our people. So let's take a moment, take a breath. Everybody, take another breath and ground ourselves where we are right now. Today is Friday, September 12th, and I'd like to share some observations that center around this date. September is Women's Medicine Month. I'm proud, yay! I'm proud that our main stage plenary speakers are women in medicine. We celebrate the women already in medicine, we support the women destined to be in medicine, and advocate for women that we care for and deserve comprehensive care. And true for all peoples, not just women. Hispanic Heritage Month begins Monday, September 15th, but already, yay, the city of Chicago is celebrating the Mexican Independence Day, and it's been around this last week and this weekend in the city and continue around the nation. Our Saturday main stage speaker is Dr. Anaya, co-director of the Center for the Study of Latino Health and Culture, Accelerating Leadership Institute. Sadly, many of our neighbors and our patients of Hispanic heritage are fearful now and lack access to needed care. We lift up our Hispanic medical professionals and all those who work and support those communities, so thank you. Let's do a round of applause for them. Yesterday was September 11th, also called Patriots' Day now. September 11th is the date we reflect on and remember the victims, the survivors, and the tragedy of the 2001 terrorist attacks. I remember being a program director and having residents who had family members who were involved in the World Trade Center and how challenging and difficult that was for them. We honor the heroic actions of the first responders and everyone who displayed extraordinary courage and patriotism in the face of tragedy. Let it be a day that also unites us. And we hope for ongoing peace and less violence as the recent attack on politically prominent public figures went on. Let's hope for calm and peace now. This conference is a place of peace to embrace our values and share our experiences and explore the possibilities of family medicine. As we begin our programming, I'd like to start by recognizing the Midwest Planning Committee that have worked together all year to plan so many aspects of the meeting. Those committee members who are here, please stand. Stand, stand, stand. Thank you. You can be one of us too next year. So now let's get started with today's official agenda. Please welcome one of our two co-chairs of that committee, Dr. Beth Payment.
I'm Dr. Beth Payment, faculty at Advocate Christ Family Medicine Residency Program and co-chair of the Conference Planning Committee. You'll meet my other co-chair in a little bit after the session, in the session. First, I'd like to express how much we appreciate Dr. Janice Benson, who has been dedicated and a delightful leader of the Family Medicine Midwest organization since its inception in 2012. She's a connector, an advocate, a champion, and a driving force behind everything that FMM has ever accomplished. We can never thank her enough for all she does, so please join me and match her level of enthusiasm with our own with more applause. We have a really busy schedule, pack as much as we can in a day and a half in. So let's run through some important announcements and get started. If you haven't already, download that Family Medicine Midwest app from the Google or Apple store, as it is an essential connection for this conference. If you just registered on site, you will have access to the app's public-facing features until your registration credentials are added tonight. Tomorrow, you will be able to use the login using your email address. You'll be able to find a lot of conference information in the resources tile on your FMM app, and there's always someone at the registration table if you need any assistance. Next, we would like to, let me make sure, I'm so sorry. Next, we would like to honor a remarkable person in our Family Medicine Midwest past. One of the Family Medicine Midwest founding family physicians, Dr. David M. Deasy, who passed away in 2023, who remained a board member until he retired at the University of Wisconsin in 2020. Last year, the Family Medicine Midwest Foundation Board of Directors established a scholarship fund in his honor to support one medical student each year who shares Dr. Deasy's passions for rural healthcare and street medicine. He was dedicated to helping those who didn't have access to adequate and equitable care, because of the distance or because of they are unhoused in their community. To present this year's Dr. Deasy Scholarship, please welcome the chair of the Family Medicine Midwest Board of Directors, Dr. J. Brunson.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. Thumbs up in the back. Can you guys hear me all right? Outstanding. I have a dad voice sometimes. I'm Dr. Jake Pronowski. I'm chair of the Department of Family Medicine at the University of South Dakota. But in 2008, I was a youngish, newish faculty member. And I went to a conference and I sat down next to Dave Deasy. Didn't know him at the time. He was in Morgantown, West Virginia. He was also new in academics. Although a decade or so older than me, we were at the same point in our careers. And we struck up a conversation. I remember the session to this day. It was called Spinning Straw into Gold. And it was about taking advantage of the work that you're all doing and figuring out ways to get academic credit for it. How do you turn your work into a presentation or a publication or an opportunity? Dave and I struck up a friendship. I was, at the time, working as an interim director for the Office of Medical Student Education at the University of Wisconsin. And we actually recruited Dave to take that position permanently. And for many years, he did a phenomenal job running medical student education for the Department of Family Medicine at Madison. Working with him was one of the greatest joys of my life. Never have I met someone who was more compassionate, more humble, and more giving of himself in the care of our community and others. I had spent time volunteering at the Salvation Army shelter for women and kids, but with Dave started working at a church, working with homeless men, and the experience just profoundly changed me. So it's a great delight to be here. We now have a scholarship in Dr. Deasy's honor. And I guess I'd like to acknowledge everyone who applied for the scholarship. We can only acknowledge one recipient, but everyone who applied is deserving of recognition. So big round of applause for all of our candidates. The person who was selected this year grew up in rural northern Wisconsin, firsthand witnessed how limited resources, physician and other clinician shortages, long travel times, and given northern Wisconsin, probably weather, impacted abilities of people to get health and health care. She has led Stop the Bleed training on local farms, helping to train people in the community to address life-threatening injuries and control bleeding in time for paramedics to arrive. Her work has demonstrated a profound commitment to community and rural medicine, really doing work not in the office, but in the community that makes a difference in ways that matter. It's with great pleasure that I'm going to ask ask Lauren Harrison from the Medical College of Wisconsin to come up and accept the David Deasy Scholarship. As she is coming up, note that she's got a couple of posters at the poster sessions and would encourage all of you to attend the posters as those sessions arrive. And I don't see Lauren, even though I saw her earlier this morning. Is she in the room? Outstanding. We will see if we can adjust the schedule and get her some FaceTime and recognition later in the day. We don't need to do a round of applause because she's not here. So with that, Dr. Payment, if you want to come back up, we'll go from there. Thank you all.
Congratulations, Lauren, wherever you are. And thank you to the Family Medicine Midwest Board members who facilitated the scholarship selection this year. It's my honor to introduce our opening plenary presenter, who is an Illinois family medicine colleague and a homegrown Midwest family physician leader. Dr. Santina Wheat is the program director at Northwestern McGaw Family Medicine Residency Program at Delnor Hospital, which is a few miles west of here. Before that, she was the program director at Northwestern's residency program in Chicago's Humboldt Park community, where she also completed her residency program. She is the associate professor and the vice chair of health equity in the Department of Family and Community Medicine for Northwestern Feinberg School of Medicine. Dr. Wheat earned her medical degree at the University of Illinois, Chicago College of Medicine, and her master's of public health at UIC's School of Public Health. She is the current first vice president of Illinois' Academy of Family Physicians, and she is one of Illinois' delegates in the AAFP Congress of Delegates. She is also actively engaged in the Family Physicians Inquiry Network and the Association of Family Medicine Residency Directors. Dr. Wheat has strong interest in reproductive health, health equity, and social determinants of health. Today, she will inspire and enable us to integrate equity and community into our family medicine journeys. Please welcome Dr. Santina Wheat.
Can everyone hear me? I don't have a dad voice like Jake. Can y'all hear me? No? Now can you hear me? Yes, awesome. Okay. So thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you so much for this invitation. It is an honor to be here today. So my goals for today are to talk to you a little bit about my personal journey and use that to illustrate strategies that physicians and other healthcare leaders can use for advancement and happiness within this career. And I also want to talk about how if we focus on equity principles and we focus on the connection of community, that can also support our growth and our fulfillment. And of course, we start with disclosures. I don't have any major financial disclosures to share with you, but I do have other disclosures that I have learned to share along the way. The first is the things that I'm going to share with you are my answers and have been helpful for me, but they're not necessarily the right answers for everyone else. I love the example of put on a coat and sort of see where it fits. And so hopefully you can take some things from this and find things that will help you on your journey. With that in mind, I am still on my own journey and still learning along the way. And that's the same for all of you. And I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to all of the people that helped me on my journey to get there. Some of them are in this room, some of them are cheering me from afar, and they have all played a significant role in how I view my success. And I'll say that I've had some ups and downs on this journey, and that led me to be a career and life coach. So some of my thoughts come from that framework as well, not just as a physician. And that is really because I love being able to help other people find the success and fulfillment on their own careers and lives, because I really think that they have to come together. Okay. So before we get started, I want to share a little bit more about who I am and where I'm coming from. So you're going to meet a little bit more of Tina Wheat. So my mom always called me Tina. My given name is Santina, but those of you who have met me in real life will have learned to call me Tina. I can tell when you've met me based on what you call me. So these are my parents. I was raised by primarily a single white woman in Chicago. My mom was an educator in the Chicago public school system, and she really believed that it was important to leave every community with more resources than what she started with. After she died, I was going through paperwork, and I found this letter that a reverend wrote about her. And this was a long time ago, but it was basically like, even though she's a white woman, she's a great person for this Black community because she knows how to really lean in. She also worked a second job her entire life, and she believed that it was a parent's job to leave their kids in a better state than where their parents started. So I was always told that I needed to be better than what she was. And then she was a baby boomer, and so I'm 42, so for my age, she was an older mom. She was about what you would expect a parent to be now, but at the time, she was an older mom. And then this is my dad, who also was in Chicago, and he was the first Black man to integrate his high school. And I mentioned my age in part because of that. I just want you to think about that timeline. It wasn't that long ago that 4 Black boys integrated their high school and ran home every day from school. That's who raised me. He also was an educator for the Chicago public school system and also worked 2 jobs. So you can tell where my thoughts on education and work ethic come from. I am also a wife and mom to 2 very energetic girls who are good mixes of my husband and I. And I'm constantly striving to ensure that they are able to interact with this world in a way that's better than what I've seen, and that they can have the best experiences because I learned from my own mom. I was raised in Chicago. This is my home. And for better or worse, that means that I have the political views of someone from Chicago. It has shaped how I think about integration and shaped how I think about culture, but this is where I'm coming from. And I'm a family physician. What that means to me is that as a family physician, you really lean into your community and think about how it is you can shape them. I've been an educator since I graduated. I enjoy training residents, I enjoy training medical students, and I also really enjoy continuing medical education as well. I didn't think I was gonna love that so much, but spend a fair amount of my time doing that now too. And I really love public health. I also have a master's in public health, and so every time we're rolling something out, I'm thinking about how can it interact with my community. So why do I share all of this with you? Well, it really shapes my perspective, and so hopefully it gives you a framework of how I'm approaching everything. So let's get started with this journey. Does anyone know who this is? Say? It sure is, thank you. So Regina Benjamin was the Surgeon General under President Obama. And even better, she's a family physician. So when I went to my medical school interviews, this is what I said I wanted to do. I said that I wanted to be the Surgeon General. And I knew that that meant a lot of work. I knew that I had to do some under-resourced medicine, that I eventually needed to get to a public health department, that I really had to understand policy. And this sounded awesome to me. eventually I decided I didn't want to be the Surgeon General, that I wanted to be the person that was behind the scenes because I really wanted to do the work and not have to take the blame when something went wrong. But this still felt like a really lofty goal for me. And I felt like if I wasn't on that path, then there was something wrong, that I would have screwed up. And some of that comes with my perfectionist tendencies, which I'm guessing a lot of you in this room have because it seems to be pretty common for those of us in medicine. But having this goal really gave me a purpose. And so this is the first strategy that I want to share with you. I think it is really important to start with purpose. It allows you to focus and to ensure the things that you're choosing are meaningful for you. But how do you do that? How do you figure out your purpose? And how do you figure out a purpose that isn't superficial? So going back to my own path, how do I get to be Surgeon General? Well, I wasn't thoughtful enough to go through this process when I was a medical student, but these are some of the things that I considered. So these are 4 questions that were written by Margie Worrell in a Forbes magazine article, and that was called Know Your Why, 4 questions to tap the power of purpose. And for me, these questions get at what is your big motivating factor? And I think that they're pretty important. So when I was 22 and I was applying for medical school, when I was asked the questions, what makes you come alive? I said, I really wanted to provide care to those who were underserved. What are your innate strengths? Well, I had experience with being dedicated and hardworking and a perfectionist, and I really thought that that would get me ahead in medicine. And don't get me wrong, that helped me get ahead in medicine, but it also caused some problems along the way. And then, where do you add the greatest value? Again, I can always lean on the fact that I'm hardworking, but I'm also passionate about this. I'm passionate about caring for people. And unlike some of my family medicine friends, I really do like the idea of research, and so I thought that I could bring things that way. And then how will you measure your life? Well, I thought I could measure my life as being successful if I could leave healthcare as a better place. So fast forward 10 years from there, and I get through medical school, I get through public health school, I get through residency, and I did it. I became a board-certified family physician. This is Dr. Mark Loafman, who I'm guessing many of you have met. He was my advisor at the time, and that's my oldest, who is now 13, which feels a little bit ridiculous. But in that journey, I was part of the first class of the urban medicine program at UIC. I was in a founding class of the residency program that I graduated from. And that residency program allowed us to focus on leadership, scholarship, and underserved medicine, all of the things that I really cared about. So I felt like I got a really good start. I got to do those things. I then did a self-directed fellowship where I got to focus on faculty development and some additional labor and delivery, and then also caring for patients living with HIV. And I spent some time on different boards and organizations really focusing on reproductive justice, which mattered for me. And these were all the things that felt like they were true to the pathways that I talked about in that goal of getting to be Surgeon General. And so then, after you start with purpose, then where do you go next? And so I would argue that the next thing that you have to do is embrace curiosity. Why is this important? Well, I think curiosity is important because it helps us understand where everybody else is coming from. It helps us be able to learn and to grow. And it helps us understand what others need. And so after that, when I look back, I felt like my next step started with disappointment. So I applied out of fellowship to be the associate program director of my position. And I don't actually know that I wanted to be associate program director, but I knew that I wanted to be a leader. And I wasn't chosen, and at the time, it felt like I was a failure. And the reasons that I wasn't chosen, or the reasons that I was given, was that I'm serious and standoffish, which is absolutely true. The APD shouldn't be the one to hold the line. That's the program director's job, and I'm really good at holding the line. And at about the same time, I received this interesting feedback of you should be smiling more, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But at the same time, I also had some personal things going on. I had a 2-year-old, so I was trying to figure that out, that lovely girl that was in the previous picture. I had a miscarriage literally at work. I was in the procedure room and miscarried in the procedure room. And my dad died. And so all of that happened together. But I took that feedback really personally because that's what I had learned to do. It was really hard. And that was okay. I put my head down and I worked hard because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to hold it together, put on that face, and keep going. And I tried really hard to stay engaged. I recommended things for improvement. I tried to focus on my quality. I tried to demonstrate that I still wanted to be a leader. And I sought opportunities for leadership and development elsewhere. And then I also responded with curiosity about how I could be better. And so one of the ways that I did that was I reached out to my chair, who was new to her role, and she was very scary and impressive all at the same time to me. I don't think about her anymore, but that's what I thought at the time. And I asked her advice, and she provided some great opportunities for me. She told me that I should try these things that were sort of outside of the institution, and that really helped. And so I was already involved at the state level for the Illinois Academy of Family Physicians, but at the time I also chose to raise my hand to be involved on the national level. So I applied for one of the commissions. And the process was a little bit different than it is right now. And I was told by somebody that it was a political game. I don't remember who told me that. And so I was told that you should just apply for everything because other people in Illinois have seniority over you and you're not going to get what you want. So as you might imagine, based on my background, I wanted advocacy and the Commission on the Health of Public Science because those seemed to be the things that I could really do. But that's not what I got. I got the one that was the Commission of Professional Development. I had no idea what that was, but I did what a good family physician does, and I said, okay, this is where my community needs me to help, so I'm gonna learn what it is, and I'm gonna figure this out. And it was really, really interesting. I didn't expect it. So what we did on this commission was twofold. One was we talked about maintenance of certification for family physicians, and the other was we talked about continuing medical education. And at the time, this is when we still had a once every 10-year test, and everybody was just complaining that the board was getting a whole lot of money, they were sitting on it, and it wasn't actually good for physicians. And so I was able to be involved in these conversations, and we were able to talk about test-taking anxiety and neurodivergence and what that means for this scary, really high-stakes test. We were able to talk about what some of our solo practitioners that had to close their practices in order to study and to sit for those exams meant. And so I was able to learn what it meant to think about everybody else's perspective and to think about different experiences that people had. And then at the same time, I got to be around some really cool people. Dr. Warren Newton, who's the president and CEO of the ABFM, showed up to those meetings. I got to meet him there, and then all of the leaders of the AAFP, because it was a really interesting time. They were all sitting in that meeting. It meant that I got to be surrounded by the great thinkers, in my mind, of family medicine. But then we also talked about education, and we were able to talk about what is the continuing medical education that's being put out by AAFP. I can scream from the rooftops that I think we need to be doing gender-affirming care and that we need to be doing HIV care and that we need to be caring about substance use disorders. But if there's not education for the people that are already practicing on how to do it, there's no way to do it. And so I was able to advocate for that. I was able to sit in the rooms and say, no, we can't bury that one. We have to produce that CME. And so I was able to be thoughtful about equity from a different perspective. So I was curious about how I could make a difference in these spaces. I knew that I could support both equity and community in family medicine in a different way. And then the one other thing that happened was my friend Shannon, she and I have never lived in the same place, but she called me and she was like, you need to come to this other meeting. You need to come to Nickel, which is, if you've never been, the meeting where different representations are there. So there's the women representative, there's the IMG representative, there's the minority representative, there's 5 different ones. And she was like, Tina, these are our people. So I showed up. And I learned that people were talking about medicine in ways that we weren't talking about here. It wasn't the same as Chicago because it was people from all over the country. And so I learned that I could find my people in other places. So I share this story in part because it was when I was learning about mentorship and sponsorship. And I think this is an important third strategy for finding happiness. Because when I found those people, what I found were a new community. I found mentors, and here I was networking. And it's important to mention that all of these folks did not look like me. They didn't have the same career aspirations as me. They didn't have the same practice types as me. But I was able to find connection and perspective and support from so many people across the journey. And I was able to keep telling people what I wanted to do with my life, and they were able to recommend different things along the way. And what I found was, as I was meeting these people and they were mentoring me, they were also becoming my sponsors. And I didn't mention this yet, but I'm an introvert. And so the idea of people talking about me in a room that I'm not in still feels kind of gross and weird at times. But in medicine, it's really interesting and really helpful that somebody can be making huge impacts on your career in other doors. And so this was how that happened. This was how I found sponsors, even though I didn't know it at the time. Now, everything I've shared so far today, I would call leadership. And leadership through the lens of equity and belonging. But to be honest, when I was 30, I didn't think that that was leadership. And I will say that I was wrong about that. So this is Catherine now when she's 3, and then baby Evelyn, who decided to come along. So when I was a resident, we did not have the ABFM leave policy that we do now. And so I made the silly decision to not extend residency and only was home for 5 weeks with my oldest. Didn't want to do that with Evelyn. I wanted to spend more time at home so that Catherine could adjust and so that we could figure this out. And I'll say the thing you're not supposed to say out loud as a mom. I was really worried a bit about being bored at home. I really like working. I like my job. And you're not supposed to say that you want to be working. And I was worried that being a mom would block my path for growth. And so an opportunity did come up while I was on maternity leave. And as it was told to me, there were conversations about me, but also about maybe not asking me because I had a new baby. And one of my sponsors said, no, you should ask. You should not pass that up without having a conversation with her. And so I was interviewed by Dr. Midgley, who's sitting in the audience, while I was on maternity leave, and did actually come back to this job as a medical director of our site and then of a service line right back from maternity leave. And when I talk about this, people are always like, are you crazy? What were you thinking? But the thing is, it was true flexibility. It was a true opportunity. When I started this role, one of the senior leaders in our organization said to me, Tina, you have found the secret to staying part-time, or to staying full-time, and that is to find leadership opportunities. It gives you that flexibility. Yes, I absolutely work a whole lot, but it means that I can find the time and be flexible to be there with my family. And being part-time is great for some, but it wasn't what I wanted, and so this was how I did it. So I finally had a title, and I got to go to the leadership meeting, so I finally viewed at the time that I did it, that I was a leader. And now what? How do I impact my community? How do I create change? And maybe how do I still fulfill that goal of becoming Surgeon General? So one of the cool things that happened when I was the medical director was we had the opportunity to start treating patients who had hepatitis C. That's when the medications changed. And I was convinced that I wasn't going to do this, that I was going to find somebody else to do it because I didn't want to expand my scope anymore. But the person that I hired to do it, she had to move, she had to go to the suburbs and take care of her dad. And so I leaned into it. I determined that this is what our community needed, and I expanded my scope and started training my residents to expand their scope as well. And so I was also able to be part of the advocacy so that patients who were using substances could still have treatment for hepatitis C, and I was able to help roll out our service line to expand to other sites. And so this was an awesome opportunity to really look at the community and see how I could help my community's needs. And at the same time, there were other things that were happening. We did an evaluation of some of our residents at my site, and it was a 360 evaluation. This is where the smiling comes back. Half of my residents received feedback that they needed to smile more, and half of them received feedback, or did not receive that feedback. And wouldn't you imagine that the half that received that feedback were the females, and not a single male did. And all I had was anger, is all I can say. All I had was anger. And it was an interesting time to lean into that. It was also around the same time that leanin.org and McKinsey came out with their reports about women in the workplace and how to advance them. And so some of us started doing evaluations on how we could make improvements, how we could change it, and really started evaluating women promotion. And at the same time, there was a debate around our residency program about who we should be recruiting. Should we be recruiting people that looked like our community? Should we be recruiting people that cared about advocacy? And there was no solution. But what all of this meant was we had to figure it out. We had to start thinking about bias. We had to start thinking about discrimination and how we were potentially part of the problem. I just want to give you like a timestamp for this because this is still way before the pandemic. This was way before this was a conversation that was running on the national stage. It was an opportunity for us to all think about how we could be better leaders. And so some people that were smarter than me applied for funding. We developed a curriculum for our residency program, and we also pulled all of this together to really think through how could we change as an organization. And as I was working in my supervisory role, I started thinking about how could we change evaluations? How could we change our education? How could we implement changes as far as little things like emails and other pieces that allowed us to be a more inclusive group? So I'm going to skip to probably the worst year of my life, which was when my mom passed. And it was horrible. The year before she died, I sat next to her bedside and would take meetings for work because I didn't want to take leave. I didn't know how long I was going to need. And then I would sit there and I would argue with her team. And it was horrible because she was always in teaching institutions. And here I was, an educator, caring so much about changing everything and making education better, while I'm fighting with residents who wouldn't listen. I would sit there and they would ignore what she said because what they saw was an old woman laying in a bed. What I saw was a woman who had a PhD and advocated for everyone in her community and was the best mom a girl could hope for. And it was this interesting push-pull about working in this space and feeling like it didn't matter what I did. And so after she died, I wasn't sure that medicine was it anymore. And so I did a whole bunch of informational interviews. I tried to decide what I needed to do. And so I asked my questions again. What makes you come alive? In the midst of grief, it's really hard to answer that question. I don't think I had an answer. Where are your innate strengths? I had learned over the past few years that I was really good at lifting up the rug, finding problems, and finding creative solutions to them. Where do you add the greatest value? I am really good at always leaning back into the mission. That always supports me. And how will you measure your life? When I stood in my church and delivered my mom's eulogy, I was in a cathedral and the entire place was packed. All of the people that my mom had touched were there. And I told you, my mom said that your kids have to be better than you. So I felt like I had to touch more people than my mom did, which are pretty big shoes to fill, but that's how I thought about it. Somehow, I had to be to the point where the discussion groups. I also was able to support the program directors organization in creating a tool that allowed us to evaluate residency programs on whether they were meeting the ACGME's DEI metrics. And I found cool opportunities to collaborate for research. Oh, please.
Battery died.
Oh. Same? Better? Okay, awesome. Okay. And then because education was changing or CME was changing, I had the opportunity to serve as lead faculty on some of the AAFP's CME products, which was really cool to shape how we were delivering information about mental health. And then I was invited by our board to be on the Illinois Task Force for Infant and Maternal Mortality amongst African Americans. This is a lot of things that I was doing all at the same time. And all of this was outside of my day job of being a program director. And this is a lot, but all of these things also helped sustain me as I was moving through. And so then thinking about inclusion and belonging, I think about these a lot every day when I work with my team. It's important to understand from both a perspective of my patients and my team members where the pain points are, where the challenges really are. And as we bring in policies and procedures for different groups, what are the impacts that they're going to have? What are the unintended consequences that are going to happen? What are the dominoes? And ultimately, we always are going to make mistakes along the way. And are we admitting it when we make mistakes along the way? Are we making those apologies? These are all the things that I think about as I'm thinking about inclusion and belonging. But also, do I feel like I belong where I am? Do I feel like I belong at those tables? Does everyone feel that way? And I ask that question because we know that when leaders are doing these things, when they're well, they're more effective, and it creates a better environment. And of course, we all thrive in a better environment. Each team member, each patient, each learner, we want to all thrive. So let's talk a little bit about community. One definition of community is a group of people who share common interests, goals, beliefs, or location. Members of a community interact with one another, they establish social norms and relationships, and they often work towards a common purpose or a common goal. It can be based on a variety of factors: geographic location, culture, religion, ethnicity, profession, or shared experiences. The strength and cohesion of a community are often built on mutual support, cooperation, and a sense of belonging. Sorry, that was a really long definition. But that means that a community can be anything. It can be this group. It can be the clinic population and the patients that you're serving there. It can be my community that's across the country. And so thinking about that in different ways can shape how you move forward. So it might be, this is who I'm serving as a physician. This is who I'm teaching. This is where I'm trying to make impact. And this is who I'm trying to ensure belongs. So by leaning into what my community needed, I have found the opportunity to grow as a physician and as a leader. And I've done this a lot through my career. One way that I did this was when I started providing MAT at my clinic, when I was one of 2 providers that was doing it. One of the ways that I did this was when I started providing hepatitis C care and providing support to others who were providing it. That was all before the pandemic. But then the pandemic came, and we saw family physicians come out in droves and really lean into their communities, changing their scope, going inpatient when they hadn't been, being educators, trying to be the voice for the community, which is something I've been thinking about a lot lately as we're in these interesting times right now. And so another way that I was able to do that was through the podcast, where we were educating other physicians on how to manage the pandemic, how to think about the vaccines. But we all have the opportunity to do that right now. There's a lot that's going on in our community. There's POCUS, there's AI. Some of y'all know I'm working on the procedure stuff that's going on. There's the procedures. There's how are we talking to our communities right now about the misinformation that's out there or the ever-changing guidelines. These are all opportunities for each of us to think about how we want to lean into our community. It allows us to grow, to adapt, and innovate and find that passion again in our own practices. How many of you have been told this? Lots of head nods, yeah. Okay, so I've already told you that I do a lot, and I really value that I do a lot. But I would be wrong if I told you that I've never been doing too much. I thought at the beginning of my career, particularly, that I should say yes to everything. That meant that I was showing up. That meant that I was telling people that I could do a good job, and that that was the way to get ahead. But I think there's a bit more nuance to that now. I no longer think that's the right answer. And I learned this the hard way during the pandemic. I signed up for everything because you didn't have to travel for anything. I could sit on my computer and join every single meeting back to back. And it was okay, but maybe it wasn't. And part of the reason is when you sign up for things that you love, it can engage you, it can energize you. And that is absolutely right. But not everything is going to energize you in that same way. Some things are going to drain you too. And so what I'm going to say to you is absolutely make time for the things that you're passionate about, but remember to include yourself in that passion. Remember to make time for yourself. And then I want to talk about balance. I talk about well-being and wellness a lot as a coach. And as a physician, as a leader, and as an educator, I know that when I'm well, I'm better for everyone. I'm better for my family, I'm better for my team, and my residents, and my patients. We all make fewer mistakes. We are nicer people. I'm less likely to be hangry. And I want to be clear. I don't think that that means working 8 to 5 hours. I think that you can be well and work lots of hours. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I definitely went through burnout. And I don't use that word lightly. I actually really don't like the word. I feel like it gets used a lot in the wrong way. And stress is different than that. So what do I mean by balance? So I'm showing you ballerinas in part because I have dancers in my house. And this is especially relevant for us right now because my oldest just got promoted to point. And I want you to imagine someone standing on point. It looks like they are perfectly still. It looks like they're perfectly balanced. But we all know that that's not true, or I hope that we all know that's not true. It's really a bunch of minute adjustments of people holding different muscles, flexing and contracting, making constant adjustments. And I want to submit for you that your life, your leadership style, your work should be the same. It's constant adjustments. And sometimes that's going to mean falling over as you figure that out, and that's okay. But you have to adjust it for the season of life that you're in. So some of the things that I learned along the way. I'm still not the smiliest person. I never will be. And that's okay. I now tell people, and excuse my language, I'm sorry, I'm a serious person. I have resting bitch face. That's just who I am. And usually they laugh at me and say that's okay. And depending on how they respond, it lets me know who I have to add extra words to at the beginning of the emails and who is just going to be serious with me. I think it's important to show up when you can. I think being here is really important. I think showing up to the networking events is really important. It shows that you believe in what you want. It shows you the opportunity to see how other people came on their journey. And it allows you to find like-minded people. And as someone who looks like me, sometimes it can be hard to find the exactly like-minded people. And within the world of DEI in particular, we still have a lot to learn, and we're getting some pushback right now. And there's things that we do that are sometimes wrong. And so as you're trying different things, as you're figuring it out, I want you to write it down. I want you to present it and publish it, especially when it feels like it's safe to do, so that we can all have these lessons and grow to be better together. And don't say yes to everything. Say yes to the things that you really want to. And 2 things. If you decide to say no, then offer somebody else. Be somebody else's sponsor. And if you say yes to something, and if your plate is already full, learn to say, I have to give this other thing up, and choose that person to hand it to. I've also learned that when I can share my vision, it can be helpful. It allows me to not be alone in the thoughts. It allows other people to jump on board. It allows them to grow and develop right along with me. It should go without saying, but it often doesn't. Absolutely find a mentor and absolutely be a mentor. I get as much out of me being a mentor as I do from having other people mentor me. And when you can, be a sponsor. So I think it's important to find a therapist when you need them in life. I had a therapist when my mom died. Making that call was probably the hardest thing I ever did, but also one of the most important things I ever did. And then also consider working with a coach because they can help you when you're stuck and feeling like you need to adjust. We think about that for athletes. We should be thinking more about it for ourselves. And take the time to rest. Remember that you can't grow and you can't change if you don't give yourself time to recover. And sometimes people need the break from you too. They don't want to have to always go, go, go. They want that break also. And then take the time to have fun. I was not very good at taking the time to have fun. Just sharing these photos that are here with the one on the top left is our recent family trip to Korea. We went for 10 days. This was something that seemed ridiculous to me for so long, to be gone for that long. It was an extended trip. My mother-in-law is a Korean immigrant, and so it's my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, my husband, and our 2 kids. So it was 3 generations exploring. That's the Slumu Institute in Chicago. For anybody that hasn't been, it's a great place to go with kids. My daughter makes me have fun and learn all about the different types of slime that are there. Go and advocate. This is me going to FMAS. If you've never been, I think it's awesome. The bottom left is the group from FPIN and one of the tools that we created to try to help evaluate diversity, equity, and inclusion within articles. The middle bottom is my group of program director friends, having that community that do the things that you care about and let you not be alone in sometimes very hard positions. And then the bottom right are residency friends, some of the folks that we trained with together, including some in this room. I really love this example of a path. I used to think that you had a straight line to success, that if I followed these steps that I would get there. Do this, and then you'll get there. It felt like all of the algorithms of medicine. But that doesn't work in life. The truth is you have to take steps back. It might be 5 steps back, it might be 3 steps forward. But each of those are steps on the way to where you need to be. Each of those are steps in helping you grow to where you are. They might surprise you, but they'll get you there. So when I first started talking about this, I asked AI, what did it mean to have diversity, equity, and inclusion principles with leadership? And this is what it spit out for me. And I think the most interesting thing about this is that it's really about how you're approaching yourself. The top 3 are. They're about how do you lead as an individual. It doesn't mean that you have to be on a DEI committee, which gives me a little bit of reassurance with what we're going on in the world right now. But you can have these principles within yourself and show up every day in a way that is supportive to yourself and everyone around you. And when you do those things, it helps you create an environment that values and respects individual differences. So what's my why now? What makes you come alive? For me, it's when my patients tell me that I've been able to help them, when they're able to say that I've been able to make a difference for them. And then also, it's my kids. When my kids come home and tell me about how they stood up for someone, when they tell me how they think it's ridiculous that someone was discriminated against and how they stood up for them, I don't necessarily tell them that that's what they're supposed to do, but they have felt that. And so I feel like I'm making a difference that makes me come alive. And also, I just have really cool kids, which maybe some of you'll meet tomorrow. What are your innate strengths? I still have some of the ones that I mentioned before. And the creative solutions within the guardrails, I still think is one of my favorite ones. But also, I have this weird ability to be like, oh, if we do that thing, then these other things are going to happen. And I do think that served me well and has been helpful along my career. It also means that I've gotten better at it because I've been able to approach situations with curiosity. well, what if we do this? Then all of these things are going to happen. What's my why? Or where do I add the greatest value? I am the quiet person in the room that will push back and ask the hard questions. I won't talk when I don't need to talk, but I won't be shy about stating my opinion. And I will always bring us back to that mission. And then how will you measure your life? I want to know, did I make this world better for my kids, for my learners, for my patients, and for my community? And I mean all of my communities in that. And this is the part that is newer for me, while also taking the opportunity to enjoy all of them. And so I didn't have a personal mission statement before. And I went through a period of time where every organization that I was part of was updating its mission, its vision, and its values. And I think that there's something real to having your own personal mission. It helps you make decisions. And so this is mine, to take on opportunities that will work to leave healthcare and this world a better place for my children, my learners, my patients, and my community, while also taking the time to enjoy my loved ones and myself. And so this helps me make all of my decisions. This helps me decide, what am I going to say yes to? What am I going to say no to? Including when my daughter asks me, can we go to the Slime Institute today? It really helps me guide all of those things. And so what I hope you leave with me, take from me today, is these things. There are some strategies that can really help you both be happy and advance in your career. The first is to know your purpose and hopefully do what I did and reassess it as you're going through the different seasons of your life. And I gave you some big seasons in my life, but I think having kids, I think moving jobs, I think things happening in the world are all reasons to reassess. To incorporate curiosity. I think this is true for lots of different things. I gave you a couple of examples, but also incorporating curiosity has helped me take things less personally at times. Sometimes when I ask the question, I realize that somebody was thinking something differently, and that has really helped. I think it's important to find mentorship, to be a mentor, and to be a sponsor. I think it's important for us to share information. That's why conferences like this are great, and I want to encourage all of you to stay engaged in publishing and sharing. And that does not have to be a research project. That could be letters to the editor. That could be doing newspaper articles or doing radio interviews, whatever it is, but share this information. Stay well, because leaders with better well-being are perceived as better leaders and are able to show up in a better route. And then, if it will help you, consider a coach and or a therapist, depending on what you need at that time in life. And then focus on equity and community, because they can support your growth. They can impact your scope of practice, and they can impact how you care for your patients. They can improve the environment that you're working with and allow others to see you differently. You have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because if you're not going to be able to do anything well. And if you have a mindset with curiosity, it will allow you and your team to grow. The other thing that I just want to say about this is one of the things that I'm advocating for, that I don't know that I explicitly said, is throughout life, if you can have a growth mindset, then that helps you be more successful. We talk about that a lot in education. But that also is exhausting and uncomfortable. And it's important to remember that and to acknowledge that. And so that is part of why you have to rest and reset. Find these opportunities to come together and remember that you're not alone in all of this, and ask for help. And so that is all I have for you. This is how you can contact me, but I'm also happy to take any questions. And all my references. Any questions? Dr. Silver. Hi.
I am so grateful that you named
So I think that the tension, in case everybody didn't hear, this is a question about the tension between personal and professional roles, particularly in balance with family. I think that the biggest way that I didn't mention is this idea that I had to come home and wear a mask, that I couldn't come home and talk about medicine. I happen to have a husband who is not in medicine, and I always thought that I was receiving the information that I had to show up as the perfect mom for my kids, that I couldn't show up and say I'd had a bad day, that I couldn't show up and say these are the things that we're fighting for. I couldn't show up and say, oh, I did this thing wrong today. And so there's that. There's also just like the scheduling nonsense that got a little bit easier just as they got older, and my kids were really teaching them to be autonomous, like they take the L train and they do things on their own, and that has helped a whole lot. But once I started talking to my kids about my day, once I started talking to them about my struggles, something interesting actually happened. My daughter recently made a comment that she knew me better than she knew my husband. And actually, she's spending more time with my husband than she is with me. And it was just sort of that, how we were sharing our days with her. I made her sort of go through what was it that she was talking about. And so once I stopped the idea that I had to be a mom and a wife or a doctor, once I really pulled the idea together that I was all of those things all of the time, and I accepted it, and that some days I was going to be more mom, or I was going to be more on as mom, and some days I was going to be more on as program director or doctor, whatever role I was playing in my professional life that day. And I could say to my kids, you know, I had a patient that was really sick today, or I had a really difficult conversation with a resident. Once I flipped that, it meant that they could interact with me differently, and everything was a little bit more comfortable. It didn't matter that I was tired. It didn't matter that I was there less. They understood the importance. And so I think that it was really just this feeling of I can't have individual identities. I just am who I am all of the time. And once I allowed those things to gel, it felt better. It's never perfect. I still get the, why are you working so hard, Mom? And I say, so that we can go to Korea and have these amazing experiences, or so that you can be a competitive dancer. Somebody has to pay for that. But it has made a lot of it much more cohesive. Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. I have found it very difficult to navigate when am I going to stand up for everything versus when am I not, particularly as a woman who is very opinionated and comes across as serious. But I have learned to use that creativity that I mentioned before of, is there a way for me to be creative and think outside of the box? I've had to step back and think of, how is this going to be perceived? Can I share it in a different way that's a little bit more creative? So sometimes it's not delivering a different message. Sometimes it's delivering it in a different way that has been helpful. Sometimes it's, do I want to go do that thing? Am I going to be accepted? Sometimes it's, can I find a solution before I walk in? It really depends on the scenario. But I will say that one of the things that has been most helpful is finding other female leaders as mentors and delivering it to them and practicing it. Sometimes people will say it in front of a mirror, and that message comes across, and I can hear, what are you hearing when I'm saying those things? And that has been really useful for me. At the same time, as I've gotten a little bit older, I've decided to pick my battles. There's things that I've just decided I can't always go up against, and that doesn't mean I'm any less authentic, but it means I have to fight for this thing more than this other thing, which is hard. It's really hard to make that decision.
We are running just a few minutes behind schedule, so I will find where my notes left off, and we'll be brief. Actually, I think all of my notes have disappeared up here. Oh, no. That's okay. It's a good thing I have a good memory. I'm Dr. Seth Hunter. I am faculty at the Indiana University School of Medicine Family Medicine program. I also happen to get to serve as the co-chair for the planning committee this year. I have a few housekeeping items before we go out to the rest of our educational sessions for the afternoon. The first of which is, if you haven't already, please download the app for the conference. You can add individual sessions into your schedule by pressing the plus button up in the right-hand corner on the schedule. You can also give feedback on your sessions through that app as well. For those of you who are using the online platform, you can access any handouts and those kinds of things for your sessions in the Files tab. And so if you will take a moment to do that, we would be greatly appreciated. I'm going to bring up the schedule very quickly so I can tell you the right times to be places. As you're taking pictures for the event, please use the hashtag FMMidwest25 and tag us on X or Twitter or whichever social media platform you ascribe to. You can also add your pictures into our shared Google Drive, which is also on the app and on the website. So this afternoon, right after here, we're going to break into the 101 ballrooms for some more education sessions. At 3:20, we're going to take a break in the main atrium. Please visit our exhibitors. They're incredible supporters of the event. They have wonderful information to share with all of you, so have good conversations, find out what services they're offering, and thank them for their support. Later this afternoon at around